I never imagined that my own son's wedding would be the moment I stopped being a mother and became something disposable in their eyes. I was still holding a champagne flute when his fiancée, Chloe, turned to a server and said, just loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, "The help eats in the kitchen." She didn't even glance at me. Her eyes flicked to Janet, my assistant of more than 30 years, then right past her, and through me as if I were part of the decor. My chest tightened, but I kept my posture steady. A few people chuckled under their breath. Others winced. One woman dropped her gaze to her plate. And Ryan, my son, the same boy I'd carried through grief, colic, and the 2008 crash, just adjusted his cufflinks and kept chatting with Chloe's cousin about hedge funds. Janet looked my way, her face unreadable. I gave her the smallest nod. It hadn't been the first insult of the evening. My name card read Susan Harper instead of mother of the groom. My favorite champagne had been swapped out for Chloe's organic rose. At the ceremony, I'd been seated 2 rows back, while her spin instructor somehow made it to the front. But this moment felt intentional. And I was finished. I set my untouched glass on the table, reached into my clutch, and slipped away behind the trellis at the edge of the garden. A breeze stirred the lavender nearby. I could still hear the quartet playing some airy jazz version of Coldplay. I called Tom. He picked up on the second ring, always punctual. "Cancel the $30 million contract Ryan planned to announce tonight," I said, calm and steady. There was a pause. "Susan?" "You heard me," I told him. "It was mine to give and now it's mine to keep." Tom didn't ask questions. He never does. That's why I trust him. "Understood," he said. "I'll notify the board immediately." I ended the call. Beside me, the roses were starting to wilt from the summer heat. I plucked one, its outer petals soft and bruising. It had been perfect once, beautiful. But its time had passed. When I returned to the table, Janet had refilled her drink but hadn't touched it. She stood slightly as I approached. "You're fine," I whispered, placing my hand gently on her shoulder. "They'll need your grace now more than ever." We both sat. Moments later, the toast began. Ryan stood and tapped his glass, drawing everyone's attention. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," he began, smiling beneath the garden lights. "Especially my mother, Susan." He hesitated, expecting applause. Instead, the air went still. Even the quartet paused. I tilted my head just enough to catch his eye. His smile faltered. He looked down, cleared his throat, and continued. "Who, helped make today possible?" "Helped." Past tense. The same boy who once sobbed into my blouse after Little League loss now looked at me like I was invisible. Chloe beamed beside him, her dress sparkling like she'd swallowed a chandelier. I sipped water. The toast went on. People laughed politely, clinked glasses, but something had shifted. Mrs. Whitman, seated by the fountain, didn't bother hiding her grin. She leaned toward a younger man, probably Chloe's godbrother, and whispered something that made him glance my way. "Good. Let them whisper." By dessert, murmurs were already spreading about the announcement that never came. The big reveal Ryan had hyped all week. The Harper Collective. The bright future he thought was secured. Funny thing about futures, they change real quick once you pull the funding. And the saddest part? That morning, before the insult, the toast, the betrayal, I'd stood in front of my jewelry box for a full hour, trying to decide whether or not to wear the silver heart locket Ryan made me in 3rd grade. It's dented at the edge with a tiny picture inside. Him missing a front tooth, me holding him in front of that very same fountain where he said his vows. I left it in the drawer. Not because I'd stopped loving him, but because, deep down, I was beginning to feel he'd stopped needing me. After I left the reception and made that call, I stayed there at the estate, but inside I drifted. I thought back to the beginning. I was 27 when Ryan's father walked out. Not a tragic death, just good old-fashioned cowardice. At the time, I was working at a design firm run by 3 men who only asked my opinion on curtain patterns or how to flirt with the client. When the divorce papers came, I had an $8,000 debt and a 3-year-old. So I built something, from scratch with a toddler on my hip. I drew up plans at the kitchen table while he napped. Designed homes, restaurants, even hospitals. Created elegance from drywall and grit. I built Harper Interiors into a name people respected, long before it was ever branded a family business. Ryan grew up there, toddling between blueprints and bolts of fabric. He used to call my leather portfolio Mommy's secret suitcase. He used to call me Mom. The first time he used Susan in public, he was 24. It was at a fundraiser. A waiter asked if he wanted to introduce me and he said, "Sure. Susan Harper, founder of Harper Interiors." I laughed back then. It took me months to realize I wasn't part of the joke. I was the setup. Somewhere between his MBA and his obsession with appearances, he rebranded me. I stopped being a mother and became a resume booster. My name added weight. My face reassured investors. But my voice. Too sentimental. Too off-brand. I let it happen. That's the part that stings most. I told myself I was stepping back, letting him lead. Passing the torch. But that torch just kept burning me. Especially when I offered to mentor Chloe and she replied, "We've hired someone younger, better aligned with the brand aesthetic." Like my face, my hands, my story had expired. Like when they renamed my wallpaper line, American Revival, and erased my name. Or when I learned just 2 weeks ago that they held a legacy brunch at my own estate, for influencers, and didn't invite me. At first I thought maybe they just forgot. But the wedding made everything clear. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was a slow, methodical removal. They were digging me out, carving away my presence until only what they needed remained. The name, the money, the image, the illusion. The next morning, while Ryan and Chloe slept in the honeymoon suite, I had Tom finalize the documents. We quietly removed Ryan from the operating trust. No press release, no speech. Just one clean cut. One thread snipped. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. By noon the next day, the whispers had already started. I stood by the garden fountain holding a flute of sparkling water. No champagne this time, and watched the tension ripple through the crowd. These were small social shifts, the kind most people wouldn't notice. But I was raised on instinct and I'd built a company from understanding tone. Word had gotten out. Chloe's comment, "The help eats in the kitchen," had reached more ears than she realized. The older guests wore their discomfort plainly, tight smiles, lowered eyes. But the younger ones, the social strivers, the boardroom talkers, the second wives in backless gowns, they could smell blood in the water. People forget that legacy only earns loyalty for as long as it serves them. Janet approached without a word, offering a small plate of pastries as cover. "Mrs. Whitman would like a word," she murmured, and then disappeared into the crowd like the seasoned shadow she's always been. Mrs. Lillian Whitman, a woman who can wear a string of pearls and draw blood in the same sentence. She and my late husband used to host luncheons back when people still had gardeners and gave a damn about linen napkins. She found me under the magnolia tree, heels sinking slightly into the grass. Her broad hat shaded her face but not her sharp eyes. "I heard what the bride said," she began, no sugarcoating. I didn't reply. She sipped her lemonade. "They forget who built the house they're celebrating in." Still I said nothing, but I met her gaze. She gave a knowing smirk. "Just don't forget who's still watching, dear. And who remembers where the empire began." Then she turned and walked off, heels clicking against the flagstone path, leaving me with nothing but birdsong and the breeze. I took it for what it was, a reckoning. A quiet one, yes, but real. The kind that doesn't make headlines yet shifts the future. Later that afternoon I was back in the estate library, the only room untouched by florists and silk table runners. My sanctuary. I pulled out the folder Tom had updated just last month. It held everything. Trust documents, emergency clauses, the full succession plan. Ryan's name was listed in 3 places. I'd already removed him from one yesterday. But now as I looked closer I saw something I'd ignored for too long. Discretionary privileges. Not ownership but power. The kind of quiet influence that gives someone control over things that don't belong to them yet. I picked up the phone and called Tom. "Addendum to the estate trust," I told him. "Effective immediately. Remove Ryan's discretionary authority. He doesn't co-sign a single invoice, let alone a development deal." Tom didn't hesitate. "Understood." "The reason?" he asked. "Betrayal," I said. The word sat clean and cold between us. "I'll have it filed before midnight." When I ended the call I finally let myself breathe. People forget, silence doesn't mean surrender. It means watching, planning, reclaiming. By sunset the wedding was winding down. The DJ had shifted from curated playlists to familiar overplayed hits. Ryan worked the crowd like a campaign trail, still shaking hands, unaware how many of those hands now pitied him more than they respected him. Chloe was all air kisses and rehearsed charm, thanking guests for their support of our union, like this was a launch party and not a marriage. I caught her eye just once. On the outside she looked radiant. But her eyes, they flickered. He felt it. Not the details, not yet. But something had shifted and she knew it. Like a pebble in a satin shoe. On our way out, Janet handed me a final guest list. Who sent cards? Who asked about me? And who stayed quiet? At the bottom, in her neat handwriting, one line stood out. Lillian Whitman, gifted a photo album of original estate blueprints. Said, you might want them back. I smiled. They thought they were launching a new legacy. What they didn't realize was, the ground they were standing on still belonged to me. And here's the thing. I didn't shout. I didn't even raise my voice. Women like me, we don't need volume. We have precision. As we approached the main house, I peeled off my gloves. Janet, I said calmly, go up to the bridal suite and collect what's mine. She didn't ask what. He never does. I simply told her a few personal pieces from the family vault had been loaned for Chloe's wedding look. It sounded so sweet on paper. An heirloom ring, a pearl-studded hair comb, a nod to tradition from the Harper Interiors matriarch. The truth? I hadn't loaned a thing. 2 nights before the wedding, Chloe's assistant had bypassed me entirely, called my estate manager directly, claimed I'd approved the heirloom collection. Even gave them the vault codes. Janet had flagged it. I told her to let it happen. Because sometimes, you need to let people show you who they really are when they think you're not paying attention. And so there she was, Chloe, glowing for the cameras that morning, dripping in stolen history. My grandmother's sapphire ring on her right hand. My mother's ivory comb in her hair. All borrowed power mistaken for her own. One simple ask would have changed everything. 1 ounce of respect. But she assumed I wouldn't say a thing. He was right. I didn't say a thing. I made a call. And now, Janet stood in the bridal suite doorway, composed as ever, while Chloe clutched the ring like it belonged to her. I don't understand, Chloe said, voice high and cutting through the hallway. Janet remained calm. Mrs. Harper has requested the immediate return of all heirloom items from her personal vault. But I'm still wearing them, Chloe laughed, pretending it was a misunderstanding. We're not done with photos yet. Janet simply opened a small velvet pouch. The room froze. Stylist stopped mid-curl. Even the air felt still. Chloe's face twitched. This is ridiculous. No reply. Tell her I'll return everything after the honeymoon. Janet didn't blink. Mrs. Harper was very clear. Today. There's something deeply satisfying about watching a woman who's used to owning the room realize she doesn't own the keys. Chloe removed the ring slowly, trying to look gracious. Her jaw clenched with every turn. She took the comb from her hair too and handed them to Janet like they burned. Janet placed them gently into the pouch, gave a slight nod and walked out. By the time we reached the car, she handed it to me. I opened the pouch, my thumb running over the cool sapphire surface. It gleamed like it had been waiting for breath. That ring had survived 3 generations of Harper women. It had seen boardrooms, hospital rooms, and battlefields of a different kind. It was not a prop for someone's Instagram reel. I slid it onto my finger. My ring. My lineage. Janet sat across from me, eyes soft and steady. I suppose Chloe thought wearing it made her part of the story. She must have forgotten who wrote the damn story. Back at the estate, the bridal party had already resumed taking photos. I saw Chloe smile, tilt her head just right, posing like nothing had shifted. No ring. No comb. Nothing borrowed now but my son's last name. She didn't cause a scene, now that surprised me. But then again, maybe she believed it was over. That I'd made my little statement and would now slip back into the role they'd reserved for me. Polite, decorative, safely irrelevant. Bless her ambitious heart. The next day I had the family vault recatalogued. Every piece logged, labeled, resecured. Access codes changed. Inventory double-checked. Janet managed it all, of course. She even placed the heirlooms in acid-free archival boxes and sealed them in our temperature-controlled storage room. Just until someone earns the right to wear them, she said. That night, I slipped the ring off and laid it gently in the dish beside my bed. It had done its job. Because I wasn't just reclaiming jewelry, I was reclaiming lineage. Chloe might have walked down the aisle with my son's name, but she'd never touch our legacy again. It started as these things often do with a spreadsheet. Not a confrontation. Not a raised voice. Just an email, subject line. Final confirmation of registry funds and gift transfers. It came from Chloe's wedding planner. 38 entries. 38 generous gifts. Everything from a $10,000 travel fund to a $7,500 designer furniture credit. All allegedly gifted by Susan Harper, mother of the groom. I read it twice. I hadn't approved a single one. They assumed the money would just flow, like champagne. They believed the Harper name wasn't just a legacy, but a bottomless well they could quietly, endlessly tap. What they forgot. I built my fortune on precision. I read every line. Janet, I said the moment she stepped in, how many of these transactions have gone through? She leaned over my shoulder, scanning the list like a surgeon. 3 so far, she said. The rest are pending. I picked up the phone and called Tom. I need a full hold placed on all wedding-related transfers, effective immediately. Discrepancy in authorization. Tom didn't ask questions. He never does. It'll be done before sunset. I hung up and let the silence settle around me like a wool coat. A few hours later the emails started. Chloe didn't write me directly, of course. Her assistant did. A short message. Just wanted to clarify a small hiccup with the registry contributions. Some transfers seemed delayed. Would you like us to resend the account numbers? I didn't respond. Janet drafted a single line in reply. Pending review. Please stand by. We sent that. Nothing more. And then the whispers returned. This time at the post-wedding brunch. I overheard a former client murmur to his wife, "Did you hear? The travel fund bounced." Another guest leaned in, barely hiding her smile. I thought the Harpers were covering everything. That's what she told us at the spa brunch. Just like that, the sheen began to dull. Chloe noticed first. Her smiles tightened. Her eyes darted from table to table. Ryan stood beside her, laughing too loudly at nothing at all, pretending the air didn't taste like vinegar. Janet and I stood near the hydrangeas at the back wall. I didn't need to mingle. The room was already doing my work for me. By mid-morning, Tom texted. All funds frozen. Legally airtight. Pending confirmation of authorization. Good. That evening I reviewed the registry line by line. It wasn't just generous, it was shameless. A commissioned oil portrait. A full-year subscription to a luxury floral service. Custom monogrammed luggage for their honeymoon. All listed under my name. And the final insult? A private couple's retreat at Lake Hillcrest. Price tag, $18,200. Donor listed as Miss Susan Harper, mother of the groom, benefactor of family legacy. Benefactor of family legacy. That's what I'd been reduced to. Not a woman. Not a mother. Benefactor. A brand. The next morning I had my finance team send a new message to every vendor. Due to a clerical error, recent Harper wedding expenditures are being reviewed. All unauthorized gifts are to be cancelled. Future contributions will follow updated estate protocol. I could almost hear Chloe's scream echo across town. That same day Mrs. Whitman dropped by. Said she was just in the neighborhood. Her driver wore a tux. Her lipstick was flawless. It was noon. She sipped my espresso slowly, her eyes gleaming. I see the empire's still well defended, she said, tapping her manicured nail against the china. Rumor has it the registry's been rebalanced. I smiled. Just cleaning the books. She chuckled, her pearls catching the sun. You may have given them a wedding, but you didn't give them anything they can cash. Later that afternoon Ryan called. I let it ring to voicemail. He didn't sound mad. He sounded scared. Hey Mom. There's been some confusion about the transfers. We thought everything was set up the way you wanted. Just call me when you can, okay? I didn't. I sat on the balcony of my study, watched the sun slip beneath the hedgerow and thought about what legacy really means. Not just what we give but what we withhold. They wanted the benefit of my name without the burden of my memory. Let them pay their own bills. I don't remember when Ryan and Chloe started calling me strategic. But I do remember when love turned into a negotiation. And not long after that I stopped giving without a ledger. So when I met Tom at his office the following week I didn't wear black. I wore navy, power not mourning. He opened the door himself. No assistant. That told me he already knew. I want to amend the will, I said before sitting down. Tom raised an eyebrow. Ryan's already out of the trust structure. You want him removed from the will entirely? No, I said, removing one glove at a time. That would be too obvious. I want him eclipsed. Tom leaned back, fingers steepled. I want the bulk of the estate redirected. Scholarship funds. Housing grants. Design endowments for underrepresented students. And the remainder, I paused, goes to Janet. His lips twitched. Well deserved. I'll leave a small living trust for Ryan and Chloe. Enough so they don't starve, but not enough to forget who's in control. We spent the next hour unraveling the safety net they'd assumed was theirs. Not out of vengeance. Not really. That's the mistake people make with women like me. They think boundaries are bitterness. That clarity is cruelty. But this was protection. From guilt. From exploitation. From people who smile while planning your replacement. When we finished, Tom slid a folder across the table. My name was typed across the front. Susan Harper, Revised Legacy Plan. I had carried Ryan through law school, his first failed startup, the down payment on that over-designed monstrosity they call a house. He once told me I smothered with structure. Well, now I'd structured him right out of power. As we wrapped up, Tom hesitated. You should know something, he said quietly. There are rumors about Chloe. I blinked. What kind of rumors? He opened a message on his phone. Word is she's floating the idea of a pregnancy. Conveniently timed. No confirmation yet. I exhaled slowly. Not shocked. Textbook Chloe. She didn't throw parties, she staged campaigns. Once threw a baby shower for a Pomeranian just to get press. A real pregnancy, Tom added. That's leverage. And she's been seen talking with guardianship attorneys. Guardianship? I asked, the word sharp. She may be laying groundwork. Framing you as unpredictable. Possibly unfit. I felt my pulse slow. A woman with opinions, with memory, with control. Tom said gently, we've seen it before. Wealthy women, powerful matriarchs, labeled confused. Tricked into signing things. Relocated for their safety. I looked at him, then at the folder again. Then I reached for my phone. Janet, I said as she answered. Initiate a full archive audit. Every document, every email, every conversation with Ryan or Chloe related to estate access. Catalog it all. Understood, she said instantly. And from now on, I added, no private meetings without a witness log. No exceptions. Even Ryan. Especially Ryan. We hung up. Tom poured the tea, Earl Grey like always, and we sat quietly for a few moments in the kind of silence that only comes from decades of trust. After a while he spoke. You're not just planning, he said. You're defending a kingdom. No, I answered, watching the steam curl into the air. I'm defending myself. From a family that sees me as a throne they're just waiting to inherit. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. That evening I walked the long halls of the estate and let my fingers drift along the picture frames that lined the walls. My wedding day. Ryan at 6, covered in frosting. My first office. The ribbon cutting for Harper Interiors. James holding toddler Ryan on his shoulders. A life framed and preserved like a gallery. A legacy, yes, but not theirs to claim anymore. The farewell brunch was held under the pergola where the white hydrangeas bent with too much bloom and the air smelled faintly of rosewater and rot. I wore cream linen. No jewelry, no defense, just composure. Let them mistake that for surrender. Let them miscalculate. Guests sipped mimosas, picking at smoked salmon blinis, laughing too loudly like people do when tension hums under the tablecloth. Chloe moved between tables, draped in pastel silk and too many teeth. If I hadn't known better, I might have thought she was radiant. But I do know better. That's the curse of age. You see when a woman isn't celebrating. You see when she's selling. Ryan stood by the champagne fountain, jaw clenched, fake laughing with a hedge fund type whose name I never bothered to remember. He didn't come near me. I didn't mind. I was waiting. Toward the end, the jazz faded and the DJ asked for attention. A mic passed around. Chloe motioned for Ryan to take it. But instead I stood. Chairs shifted. Someone dropped a fork. Ryan's eyebrows lifted. Chloe's smile stiffened. Just a moment, I said, my voice warm, clear, like the floor beneath us wasn't shifting. I just want to thank everyone who came all this way, who stood in the sun, who toasted this new chapter. A few nods. Polite clapping. But I wasn't finished. I also want to speak about legacy. That made them lean in. Legacy isn't framed photographs, I said, gesturing toward the montage Chloe had insisted on. Glossy candids. Over-filtered engagement shots made to look timeless. It's not monograms, registries, or a trending hashtag. I paused. Legacy is love. The quiet kind. The inconvenient kind. The kind that sits with you after chemo. That remembers your favorite pie. The kind you don't audition for. Silence. Real silence. Even the cicadas hushed. I smiled, not soft but full. And if I've learned anything, it's that legacy isn't what you leave. It's who protects your name when you're not in the room. I raised my glass. To truth. And to whoever tells it. A long beat passed. Then Mrs. Whitman clapped. Then Janet. Then others followed, awkward, unsure but loud enough to matter. Ryan's face locked into that blank male expression that hides calculation. Chloe didn't move, her mimosa frozen in her grip like she'd forgotten how to hold it. I placed my glass on the table. Then I walked out, not dramatically but deliberately. Like a woman who no longer asks permission. Janet caught up to me near the trellis of roses. Well, she said with a light breath, that'll be in the society column before dinner. I handed her my clutch. Good. Let them print something honest for once. She glanced back. Ryan looked like a man trying to hold sand in his hands. Chloe looked like a matchbook in a thunderstorm. We didn't laugh. It wasn't funny. It was just true. That night I found an envelope slid under the door to my study. No name, no postage. Inside, a monogrammed note card. The message read, "You didn't have to humiliate us." No signature, but the font screamed Chloe. I fed it to the fireplace flame. Then I wrote a letter to Tom, documenting what happened, cataloging every word. Because legacy isn't memory alone. Legacy is documentation. Proof. Truth preserved. I wasn't eavesdropping. The walls were simply thinner than they realized. It was later, after the guest had gone and the staff had started collecting linen swans and empty flutes. I went to fetch my wrap. These old bones stiffen when the sun sets, no matter the heat of the day. At the second-floor landing just outside the bridal suite I paused. The door was cracked. The voices inside. Familiar. You said she'd be predictable, Chloe snapped. You said she'd play the gracious matriarch and roll over, like always. Ryan's voice followed, low, tight. Well, she didn't, did she? Now half our guests think we can't pay for our own honeymoon. There was silence. Then Chloe again, quiet, sharp. How long do we have to keep pretending to tolerate her? My stomach turned, but I stayed still. Just long enough for her to slip, Ryan muttered. She's nearly 75. One confused comment, one missed pill, something we can show a judge. The knife didn't cut affection, it cut intention. She's not going to hand us anything, Chloe said bitterly. You'll have to take it. She trusts me, Ryan muttered. She always has. Chloe laughed, cold. Not anymore. Then she added, even softer. If we want control, we have to move before she rewrites everything. Too late. I already had. I stood still until the door clicked shut behind them. Then I turned calm and returned to my study. I retrieved the small voice recorder Janet had tucked into my clutch after brunch, just in case. She always thought ahead. I didn't cry. I sat at my desk. Hit record. Spoke clearly. Fully. Gave the time, the location, what I heard, who said it. I signed and dated it. Janet witnessed it. Tom received it within the hour, sealed and documented. Evidence. Not for today. Maybe not even for this year. But if the time comes, it'll be enough. After Janet left, I poured a glass of wine, not my usual Pinot. Something darker. A Merlot we'd opened once at Ryan's law school graduation. I remember he hated it. Too bitter, he said. I've acquired the taste. I sat in the chair James picked out in Florence back when he believed the right chair could fix a broken back, and I let the truth settle. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were planning how to push. I didn't sleep that night. I listened to the stillness between rooms, to the wind outside the shutters, to the last words my son said when he thought I wasn't listening. Just one confused statement on record. That's what I was now. A vulnerability. A crack to pry open. You don't recover from hearing that. You shift. I looked up at the portrait above the fireplace. Ryan at 9. Little League uniform. A gap-toothed smile like the world still made sense. I whispered to it, I raced a boy who became this. Then I took the envelope holding the backup access codes and I moved them. New bank. New structure. New contingencies. Janet and Tom got copies. The family did not. Not anymore. That second knife, it didn't cut me. It woke me up. You see, society's loyalty? It's only skin deep. Peel back the champagne, the pearls, the charity auctions, and what you find are scavengers. Smiling. Waiting. So I gave them wind. Not a gust, a breeze. One scented with old money and something vaguely spoiled. It started with a luncheon. Janet planned it. Quiet. Curated. 6 women I've known for decades. Wives of architects, deans, art patrons. Women who don't need storm warnings. They feel it in the linens. I didn't mention Ryan or Chloe. I didn't need to. I simply let a few truths fall like pearls from a broken clasp. Oh, I've stepped back from the trust board. Legacy fatigue, I suppose. I'm shifting funding to direct initiatives. No more family bottlenecks. When you give someone everything and they treat you like a wallet with opinions, it's time to revise the estate. They nodded. They always nod when a woman with power stops apologizing for it. By dessert, 2 of them had already asked to be introduced to Tom. One of the women at the luncheon quietly slipped me a card for a women's foundation in D.C. All 6 of them left that day fully aware. Susan Harper was no longer letting her son represent the empire. The next morning I sent a vintage bottle, something rare and thoughtful, to Mrs. Whitman. A gift, yes, but also a signal. Within a week she hosted her own brunch. Not a single Harper on the guest list, but I heard my name came up 9 times. You don't have to go to war to change perception. You just have to remind people who's more valuable to stand beside. Ryan called twice during that stretch. I let the phone ring. Not out of cruelty, out of strategy. Sometimes silence does more than shouting. Silence makes people anxious. And anxious people talk. And talk they did. Janet would appear in my doorway, clipboard in hand. Mr. Channing mentioned that Chloe's foundation was denied matching funds. Looks like she's no longer considered a controlling party. Or, the Petons rescheduled their garden party. Didn't want it too close to the Harper fundraiser. These weren't accidents. They were recalibrations. Ryan noticed. At the quarterly board meeting, the first one I'd missed in 12 years, he brought it up for the record. I'm concerned about optics, he said, gripping that branded blank pen like it was a flotation device. There's some confusion about leadership and direction. Our donors are uncertain. Tom sat 2 seats over. Looked directly at him and said, that's the price of standing in someone else's shadow. You never really know the shape of your own. Ryan had no response. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine. Not in celebration, though there was a quiet satisfaction. For the first time in months I felt anchored. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. Reclaiming myself. For too long I'd lived beneath titles. Mother, widow, founder, benefactor. But now, I was Susan. And Susan didn't owe anyone an explanation. Later that week, Janet and I updated the internal Harper Interiors directory. Ryan's title stayed untouched. Founder Emerita. No forwarding number. Let their questions echo into the void. They always believed the company was his. That was the joke. Ryan, in his bespoke suits and perfectly tousled hair, the visionary behind Harper's success. But Ryan didn't build anything. He inherited scaffolding and mistook it for architecture. So I let him feel the moment when scaffolding starts to give. It began with what Tom and I always called the ghost portfolio. Quiet investments made over decades. Some listed under Harper, others buried in trusts and licensing rights. Real estate patents shells. Not glamorous. Not headline-worthy. But stable. Profitable. And all mine. Ryan never understood. To him they were just numbers on a spreadsheet. Assets to brag about at board dinners without ever wondering where they came from. So one Tuesday morning, over lemon toast and coffee, I began divesting. Not all at once. Just enough to stir the ground beneath his feet. A boutique hotel group we'd backed? Sold. A licensing deal with a Scandinavian textiles firm? Transferred. A dormant design line. The Harper Legacy Collection, once meant to be Chloe's passion project? bought out entirely by a nonprofit I launched that same morning. By Friday, a third of Ryan's reported successes had disappeared. Quietly, neatly, untraceably. Because ghosts haunt best when they stay invisible. Tom called that afternoon. His voice was calm, unreadable. Your son's requested a board meeting to address some portfolio discrepancies. Shall I add you to the schedule? No, I said. Let him explain the house of cards without me. Janet and I sat in the garden that day, sipping iced tea as the camellias bloomed weeks too early. Always a sign of false spring. He called twice, Janet said, glancing at her phone. Left a voicemail. Says he wants to, quote, clear up any misunderstandings. I'm not confused, I said. He is. That evening, Harper Interiors released a quiet statement. Internal restructuring underway. The press didn't notice. But the people who mattered. They did. Ryan's name vanished from donor invitations. A design council event he was scheduled to host? Canceled. The empire didn't fall. But it was trimmed. Deliberately. And Ryan was bleeding from places he couldn't see. 2 days later, I received a handwritten letter. That alone shocked me. Mother, I don't understand what you're doing. I've worked so hard to honor what you built. I know Chloe's made mistakes, but she's trying. We both are. Why are you cutting us out? Please, can we talk? I stared at it. Worked hard. He walked into a castle built on my hands and decided to redecorate. And now that the walls were shaking, he wanted to know why the foundation trembled. Janet found me sitting there with the letter in my lap and a far-off look in my eyes. You okay? She asked. I nodded slowly. I just keep thinking. I gave him everything. And he looked at it like it was a menu. She said nothing. Just placed a cup of tea beside me. I should have made him earn it, I whispered. Or at least understand it. Janet gently touched my shoulder. You're doing that now. I folded the letter. Didn't reply. Dad, I called Tom. I want the licensing revenue redirected, I said. Use it for women's transitional housing. Keep the Harper name on it, but let it finally mean something again. He exhaled with a quiet, approving laugh. That'll sting. Good. That night I slept peacefully. Ryan never grasped it. You can't build stability on borrowed scaffolding. Eventually the ghost comes calling. And it did. In a plain envelope. No seal. No note. Just a photo. Ryan's graduation day. He was 23, flushed from champagne and praise, one arm draped around my shoulder. I was in that navy suit James used to call my armor. Pearl buttons, strong lines. We were both smiling. Really smiling. On the back in my handwriting. The last time you looked at me with respect. Janet asked if I wanted to deliver it myself. I said no. It needed to land where he felt safest. His office. 2 days later he called 3 times. I didn't pick up. Let silence speak. By week's end he showed up at the estate. Alone. No Chloe. No driver. No photographer smile. Just Ryan in a rumpled blazer and a face that looked older than 39. I didn't invite him in. We sat out back under the fig tree, the same one we'd sat beneath when he was sunburned and curious in mine. I got your note, he said at last, turning the envelope over in his hands like it might hurt him. I nodded. I deserved it. Silence. He inhaled. You think I don't know I messed up? That I let her talk down to you? That I stood there and did nothing? His voice cracked. I hate that version of me, Mom. But he didn't. Not really. He hated that version had consequences. I just wanted to build something, he said. To be someone. You were someone, I said softly. Long before the board seats and the designer shoes. You were mine. He swallowed hard. I know that now. That's the problem, I said. You know it now. After everything. He looked down at his hands. I miss you. I glanced toward the camellias, already wilting in the late afternoon sun. Missing someone doesn't bring them back. He didn't argue. Just nodded. I didn't come to ask for anything, he said quietly. Not money. Not access. I didn't want to be a ghost. And for a second I nearly softened. But then I remembered the recording. His voice in that room. Just one confused statement on record. He wasn't here because his heart changed. He was here because the floor gave out. You know what hurts most? I asked. It's not the money. Not the board votes. Not even the damned ring. He met my eyes. It's knowing I raised a son who stood silent beside a woman who erased me, moment by moment, and said nothing. His voice broke. I didn't think you'd care. And that was the wound that didn't heal. You thought I didn't feel? I thought you'd just keep being strong. There was. I stood then, slowly, purposefully. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. I am strong, I said. That's why I'm not angry anymore. He blinked. I'm done, I said. That's not rage. That's peace. He rose too, like a man realizing he'd missed a train he would never catch. I'm sorry, he whispered again. I nodded. And I believe you. Then I looked at him, steady and sure. But sorry, I said, isn't a door. It's a mirror. He left without another word. I stayed under the fig tree, letting the dappled afternoon light fall through the leaves like memory. The scar hadn't gone silent. It had simply stopped needing to be seen. I didn't call a press conference. I didn't gather the board. I didn't even notify the family. I just left. One Friday morning before sunrise, Janet and I quietly packed up my office. 42 years of fabric samples, awards, letters and ledgers, archived into boxes labeled Legacy, Private. The only thing I left behind was a brass nameplate on the door. Susan Harper, founder. Past tense. Janet handed me the last envelope. Inside was the final press release Tom had written exactly as I instructed. After decades of leadership, Susan Harper formally steps down from her role at Harper Interiors. She will continue her work through the Harper Initiative, a philanthropic foundation supporting women in design, education, and entrepreneurship. No mention of Ryan. No mention of family. Just me and the future I'd chosen. The call came just after 9 a.m. Janet and I were organizing the reading nook in my new lake cottage. A sun-warmed little room where silence wasn't suspicious, and every creak came from wood settling, not people scheming. My cell rang. Unknown number. Janet raised a brow. Want me to screen it? I shook my head. I know who it is. I was right. Hi, Mom. Ryan's voice was rough, quiet. Can we talk? I didn't say anything at first. I know I've said it before, he continued, but I mean it this time. I'm sorry, for everything. For Chloe. For not protecting you. For making you feel like you were some asset we were just waiting to inherit. I looked out the window. The lake was still as glass. I panicked, he said. The company was slipping and I didn't know what to do. I thought I had time. I thought you'd always be there to fix it. I never thought you'd just leave. And that, right there, was the heart of it. They never think we'll leave. I'd like to see you, he said softly. Not to ask for anything. Just to talk. Just us. I agreed. Not because I owed him anything, but because I needed to see his face without Chloe's shadow or the boardroom spotlight. Just the son I once knew. We met at a park halfway between the cottage and what used to be our city. He looked older. Not thinner in body but in certainty. The kind of thin that happens when your scaffolding finally collapses. Thanks for meeting me, he said. I nodded, let the wind fill the silence. I'm not expecting anything, he added. No property, no title, not even forgiveness. I tilted my head. Then what are you expecting? I want to start over. I studied him. No, I said gently. You want to rewind. He blinked. What's the difference? Starting over means moving forward, building something new. Rewinding is pretending the damage never happened so you don't have to clean it up. He was quiet. You had so many chances, I said. To defend me. To say something when Chloe belittled me. When she twisted our history. When she mocked the hands that raised you and you stood there. I didn't think it mattered that much, he murmured. There was again. That wound dressed as logic. You thought legacy was a name, I said. But legacy is memory. And you let her rewrite mine. He reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in tissue. I found this in a drawer, he said. From when I was a kid. I thought, you should have it. I unwrapped it. A crayon drawing on cardstock, messy, bright. Me in an apron holding a tray of cookies. Above it read, my mommy is a boss. The O in boss was a heart. For a second I felt something pull through me. But then I folded it up carefully and handed it back. I remember her, I said. But she doesn't live in the same house as the woman you treated like an ATM. He looked down. So that's it? No coming back. I gave him a small smile, not cold, not cruel. Just honest. I raised a son, I said. You raised an ambition. He closed his eyes, nodded once. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We didn't try to glue back what had been purposefully broken. We just stood there, the wind carrying away the last words we'd ever speak as mother and child. The announcement dropped on a Tuesday morning. No teasers. No leaks. Just a crisp press release sent to every major outlet on Harper Initiative letterhead. Final statement from Susan Harper on the future of Harper Holdings. I sat on the porch with my tea watching lake mist rise like breath from the water. Janet was inside on the phone with Tom managing coordination. But I didn't need to be in the room anymore. The words had already been spoken. After 4 decades building a family business, I have chosen to divest fully from Harper Holdings. I hold no financial, legal, or advisory ties to the company. This decision was not made in haste but in clarity. The $30 million previously earmarked for company expansion will instead fund the Harper Initiative, supporting education and entrepreneurship for women of color. Legacy is not an empire. It is not a last name. It is who keeps your name safe in their mouth when you're not in the room. Susan Harper. That last line, that was for Chloe. I never said her name. I never would. But she was the one who tried to turn my identity into a monogram and my love into a line item. Let her feel the weight of what she dismissed. It took only an hour for the calls to begin. Janet filtered them. The headlines came fast. A matriarch withdraws from Harper Empire. Redirects millions to marginalized women. Susan Harper retires with grace and teeth. Chloe Harper omitted from final statement, fueling rumors of estrangement. I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't have to. Around noon, Mrs. Whitman pulled up to the cottage. She wore enormous sunglasses and carried lemon bars in a tin older than some of our regrets. You did it, she said, folding herself into the porch chair. You dropped the match without flinching. I smiled. Matches don't scare me. I've already been through the fire. She poured herself tea. No sugar. Just bitterness as always. Ryan called me, she said after a pause. Said he's stepping back for a while. Chloe left last week. I didn't react. But something inside me settled. Like a chapter closing. Left. I asked. Filed for separation. Her lawyers using phrases like emotional deception and inheritance misrepresentation. I sipped my tea. Well, empty pockets do make honest lawyers. She laughed, sharp and wheezy. You always had the sharpest spoon in the drawer. I looked out over the water. The wind had picked up, sending whispers across the surface. Did you ever love him less? She asked. I shook my head. No. I just stopped protecting his illusion. That afternoon, Janet and I took our usual walk along the shoreline. She asked me what I wanted engraved on the Harper Initiative cornerstone. I thought for a moment, then said, "Tell the truth even if it costs you everything." She wrote it down. We kept walking. That night, for the first time in years, I didn't dream about Ryan. Or the estate. Or the house that forgot how to hold love. I dreamed of my own hands, building, stitching, signing. Unmaking. Remaking. Fiercely. Quietly. With my dignity intact. And when I woke up I smiled. Because I was finally alone. And fully respected.